All right, Una, what's the dope?
All right, well, this is going to be a swell video.
What's that mean?
Oh, like the dialogue's going to be really swell.
Yeah, but is there going to be any action? You know I like the action.
Well, I mean, that's swell, but I wouldn't bet on
You
it.
said to never bet on what you say. Are you all right, bro?
I don't feel so swell, Mr. Crypto.
You taking the dive. Spoiler right there. He took the dive for the video.
Welcome to the CodeX Cantina. I am Una.
And I'm Crypto.
I catch my breath because that was a lot of work. And today we're doing My Old Man by Ernest Hemingway, first published in 1923 in 3 stories and 10 short poems, and then published again 2 years later in Our Time, which is important that it was in our time. Influenced 2 major films, and I gotta admit, this one I don't feel totally confident on. Crypto. How do you feel about it?
I don't know how to feel.
It's kind of like the Hemingway Code. Do you know what the Hemingway Code is?
I do not.
Okay, well, it's like the idea that what they're kind of like obsessed with is also kind of like their moral downfall or their character flaw. So it's kind of like the idea that you're so confident in your review and your analysis that that's your fatal flaw, is your inability to see other things. It's kind of ironically used to describe ourselves.
Interesting.
So we do literature breakdowns on the reg here. Please consider subscribing for more Hemingway, Faulkner, and other literary greats. Today, let's get into this. If you're not new to this channel, what we typically do is we will break down kind of like our initial reactions, quotes. We'll go into plot, which is then the spoiler territory, where if you haven't read it, you need to. It's only 10 pages. Get out there and read it. And then there's a discussion section at the end, which is where we really do the breakdown for this. All right, so for quotes, I've got one for you.
Hit me.
This course rides itself. It's the pace you're going at that makes riding the jumps dangerous, Joe. We ain't going any pace here, and they ain't really bad jumps either. But it's the pace always, not the jumps, that makes the trouble. Let's jump into plot.
Okay.
But the narrator, a boy named Joe, recalls how his father would fervently work out and stay in shape for his profession as a steeplechase jockey in Milan. After winning a race, Joe found his father in an argument at a local cafe, and they soon moved to the Maisons. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correct.
Sounds good.
Later, the narrator recalled going to a race at St. Cloud. His father asked another jockey who'd win the race. Miraculously, that's what the jockey predicted was what happened. Joe vividly recalls time spent with his dad in cafes and passing time looking for work in France. Eventually, his father saved up enough to buy his own horse. When he raced the horse, at some point, there was a crash, and his father was killed in the accident. The horse was shot, and the crooked jockey from earlier consoled the narrator as several patrons said he got what was coming to him. The boy felt they don't leave him with anything. And that's the plot, which I think can probably leave some people unsure exactly what this meant. So what's most interesting to me when I read this is how detailed some things are in this story, like everything from like the wormy guy in the town center that showed like the smutty cards. You had the rabbit that got up and run away after they shot it. He's very vivid on those things. But then when he gets to his father and potentially the fixed and crookedness of throwing horse races, essentially, it becomes a little fuzzy. So I think this piece is very interesting from like an unreliable narrator perspective. What was your take from that? Did you think the boy knew all along, or do you think the boy kind of conveniently forgot these details?
I think you can look at it both ways, but as I was reading the story, I feel like that he definitely didn't know up until the very end, and then he started questioning the validity or the honor of how the father was making the money or winning or how things were going for him. And I think that the strongest point to support that claim that he didn't know up until the very end, and when he questioned it, was when, what's his name, the guy that is consoling him?
George Gardner.
Yeah, so George Gardner tells him, don't listen to anything those guys say about your dad. He was a good dude. And so obviously George could see on the boy's face oh man, these guys are talking crap, and I need to make sure that he has good memories of his father and that he wasn't a scumbag.
Yeah, there's some interesting lines here because obviously he saw his dad arguing with Holbrook and the Italian man, and then they left for France after that, right? Right after he won that race. Before entering into that race, he's got this line that he says, as he's leaving the locker room, says that he was looking red-faced and tired and too big for his silks. And he says, to hell with it. And that's when he wins this big race and gets into the fight with Holbrook, right? So he's probably meant to either throw the race or not win, but he ended up winning it, having to leave to go to France. So whether the boy recognized that or not, I'm not sure. I mean, it's fair enough to say he sent him off and he doesn't remember those details. But it was the next time with Khazar, right? Where basically the dad says to the boy afterwards, George Gardner's a swell jockey, all right. It sure took a great jock to keep that Khazar horse from winning. Like he's basically telling, and he recognizes it in the narrative. He says he was surprised that his dad said it outright or something like that.
Yeah.
And there's this line right here where he says, of course, I knew it was funny all the time, but my old man saying that right out there like that.
So I think he's trying to tell his father's story, right? And I think as a boy, he was maybe aware of the problems, but not to the depth of them. But he was definitely blind to many of his father comings and goings. And if he's telling this as an older man and reminiscing about his father, he definitely knows then. So as a boy, I think that his dad probably shielded him pretty well, like parents do a lot of times. But as an adult, when you reflect back, you're like, oh, my dad might not have been the best person in the world, but he was good to me, right? Yeah. And that's like, you may be a terrible dad, but, your son would never know that until you're dead and he's looking back on his own, introspective of life.
Would it change your mind if the boy exhibited those behaviors as a boy, where he was also kind of lying or trying to fix races?
Oh, yeah. It would, definitely, I think it knocks Joe down and then pulls his father even further down, that, he is copying his father. He definitely would know then.
Well, what did you think about that line when he saw the girl at the cafe? And he fantasized about saying, pardon me, but perhaps I can give you a winner at Einkind today, which is I think it's a German racetrack. Like, it's almost like the boy was saying, hey, I can predict the winner for you. This is just after he saw his dad kind of get the, hey, what's the dope story? Does that kind of imply that maybe the boy knew that he could maybe get some winners from his dad?
I don't think to fix horse races, but I think...
Well, not, yeah.
That,
yeah.
Well, I think that's important because his dad is fixing horse races. I don't think he knows that as a boy, and I think that he just thinks his father is that good of a jockey, that knowledgeable, that he's like, well, I'm going to ask my dad. My dad will know because he's super good and smart, and he's been winning all the time, and now I'll have this precious information that I can impress a girl with to try to get a date.
Okay, see, I took it as... I could see that angle. I took it as he would ask his dad if he knew who if there was a fixed winner for that race.
No, I don't think it came across that way.
Interesting.
Again, I think the boy's naive. I think the boy is naive to all of this, and that's kind of the point of the story. Is he's looking back, going, my old man, he was such a good person to me in my eyes, but he was actually not that great of a person in the eyes of the world.
He could have been one of those roly-poly guys. I did what did you think about the decay of the father?
Well, he kind of has peaks and valleys, right? I mean, he's going into a valley, but he's trying to keep himself in good working condition to be a jockey. He is doing well, gets to fix races, they make some money, and he kind of drops again a little bit into another valley. Then they get a horse, so he starts trying to take care of himself again. So I think he's trying to prolong his longevity in the horse racing business, not just as a bettor, but as a jockey as well. And I thought that it is a lot like a lot of us in life, right? We have a a midlife crisis, so to speak, and he is doing his best to obviously raise this kid on his own and maybe try to shield him from his shady business, but keep the boy's integrity intact. And he's obviously falling apart a little bit.
Well, let me say this: the Hemingway character is supposed to do the right thing, right? And if I think the dad's name's Butler, at least that's what I kind of took from it. If Butler was fixing races, he knows that's not the right thing, like the right action to take in front of his son too, as he's raising his son.
Okay.
I think there's some interesting symbology here too, where if you notice that what is on the surface is a lie, and if what the Hemingway character is meant to be masculinity and meant to be, you know, the winner, the jock that can win the race when he wants to, and that's the truth underneath that lie, I think there's a lot of interesting symbology in this story with that. So you have a couple of different symbols of that. You have the guy that was described as wormy, that had the cards, right? And they said nobody wants the cards, the lie on top. But once they saw what was underneath, the smutty women, everybody came out and bought those cards, right? You had the rabbit, where they thought they had killed it, but then, you know, again, a masculine act of hunting. And once they had it down, it just got up and ran away. So the truth was that it was still alive. And then even you had the horse race with Khazar and the other horse that they said, hey, this is a good looking horse, but it's not as good looking as a horse as Khazar over there. So you get presented with a couple of different layers of lies, with the truth being underneath it and eventually escaping out. And isn't that kind of what happened for this boy with his father, where he had this lie on top that he was, you know, this masculine horse rider, but the reality was that he was fixing races or throwing races for money behind the scenes. And I think that's why you come back to that line at the end. But I don't know. Seems like when they get started, they don't leave a guy nothing. And I kind of thought about this from that perspective, where at the end they're taking not only like the father's gone, they shoot the horse, right, that he would have inherited, but then they also kind of take the boy's memories. They take away those what he thought was the truth. They take away the lies and uncover what the truth really is for this boy, was that he was fixing horse races. And that's what I kind of took that last line to mean, was to kind of combine that with like that symbology earlier in the story.
Yeah, I like that. So my one talking point kind of goes to the last line, and I had a different little interpretation of it, and I looked at it again like more as a historian, because it's brought up several times in the story about the war, and that they talk about how they raced in the war basically just for fun and to keep the horses fresh and keep breeding the horses and all that. And Hemingway was in World War One, if I remember correctly, and I think that war war takes everything from a person. They break you down and rebuild you as a soldier, and it steals your innocence, it steals your humanity, it can steal your life, and I think that him running through this is almost like a person going through war, and you'll do anything you have to survive war, and I think the boy represents his innocence that's lost because of World War One, where it takes and takes and takes and takes. I don't know.
I can't. It's been so long since I've read a biography on him, but I know he signed up, and I know he's gotten a lot of criticism from Vonnegut, who basically called him out, saying that you're glorifying war. War is not pretty. It's horrific. And the reality is that he came home with like a fake limp and told everyone that he was like this great war hero. Not saying that he was lying, but he was embellishing it. But he was part of the lost generation, which spent a lot of time in France trying to find themselves, with the idea being, what have our fathers given us? I don't know what to do with this world after this World War II. They felt confused. They felt lost. And I think it's exactly to your point. That's the way And this is also in his second publishing was in Our Time, which all of those stories were about having like a world being thrust upon you that you didn't know how to interpret. To your last point, that's why he uses the kid, I think, in this story, is because the kid can represent that naivety, that unsure, unaware how the world works now, and having this now thrust upon him. He doesn't know what to do with it. I think I've heard that, and I know that comparison is made to a lot of the stories in the In Our Time short story collection.
I like that viewpoint too.
It's all just different ways of kind of interpreting it. Like that's just another way that I know critics have looked at it.
Yeah, I think that the war is definitely something significant.
Yeah, and you're right. It displaced him, right? He was part of that lost generation that didn't know what to do, spent time in France trying to find himself, and found an outlet through writing, right?
And I don't think that he in this story he doesn't seem to glorify war, but it does seem to be obviously influential part of his life in the story.
Right. All right, so let's wrap this up. What's your rating?
I'm overcritical sometimes of the ending, and this ending is bitter, and I'm okay with bad endings, but bad ending for a kid, giving it a 5.
I think this actually critically was one of the worst stories in Our Time. I don't feel a big connection to it either. I'm going to go with a 6, I think, for this one.
That's a little higher than I thought you'd give it. So.
Oh, you thought I was going to pan it even worse?
Yeah, I thought you might go a little bit below me. Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought you might be like a 4.5.
I might be more right now just emotionally invested in this because I did reread this probably 4 times to really help me understand where this was. It took me a while to kind of figure out what exactly was happening with this piece.
And see, I just didn't connect with it. It was, I got to the end, it felt like it needed an epilogue. Like, I needed more of the boy's story, because it felt like this is the old man's story, and now it's like, where's my story? I guess is the sequel, My Old Man, and then my life.
Yeah, no, I had to work pretty hard to pull this one out, but in the end it was pretty good. But this is by no means his strongest effort. So
yeah.
All right, guys, we post videos every Monday and Thursday, and sometimes we have a third video a week, so we appreciate it if you were to click subscribe and check out future videos. Peace out, guys.
Peace.